Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and once again, welcome to the Funk Chronicles. I'm your host, Dr. Turk Logan from Logan Communication and the Funk Museum, Exhibition Center, and Hall of Fame right here in Dayton, Ohio. With me, I have the legendary Shawn Sandridge. How you doing, man?
I'm doing fine, Mr. Dr. Logan. Turk, how are you doing?
I'm hanging in there. As we grow old gracefully, we talked about that. Boy, I'll tell you, what it's been, 30 plus years now?
30 plus years.
Man, I tell you.
And I'm still seeing you.
Hey man, I'm still
seeing me.
And we're both glad that we are still seeing each other.
Absolutely.
You know, Shawn, I want to take this opportunity to personally thank you for what you did for me back in 1983, 84, 85, 86. And ladies and gentlemen, when I left WDAL radio, I fell upon hard times, like many of us do, right here in Dayton, Ohio. And Shawn stepped in and asked his aunt, Irene Smith. you remember that?
Yes.
And
yes. How can I forget?
If I could stay there, and I lived at her house
on Lakeview,
right, for 3 years, and she was in her 80s at the time,
full of
vim and vigor. And it was so rewarding for me because she was like a mother. She was your mother's sister, and she was just sweet little lady.
Oh
and,
yeah.
And I had a room there for 3 years, and man, she was like a drill sergeant.
She was regimented. You know, she worked at Miami Valley Hospital. Some of you guys or some people that are listening might have remembered her. She was a little short lady with a little ball on her head. And she always ran the elevators.
For 30 years.
50.
50 years?
She was out there for 50 years because she's got a plaque out there now.
And man, I tell you, it was so rewarding and honorable just to be around her because she would cook and her house was always spotless.
Right.
And it was just as I was getting back on my feet, and then in 1986 I ended up at Central State, and 1988 ended up moving to Greene County. So I want to thank you because you looked out for the brother, man. I appreciate that.
No, but you looked out for us also, especially the Deo years.
Right.
When Deo was a breaking station. A lot of folks might not know Deo. If you were fortunate enough to get your music played on Deo, that would chart you. It was one of the reporting stations, and it carried a lot of weight. And what I liked about you brothers, you never asked us for any payola, any money, none of that off the wall stuff like some brothers
many people did, yeah.
Many folks.
Well, always have their hand
When you
out.
hit that chilling circuit, man, it was, how much you got for me? What can you do?
Right.
Is it going to be in flesh? Is it going to be in grain? Or, you know, the market was scandalous, but you guys, you helped us.
And the rewards were just phenomenal because I had the opportunity to go out on the road with you guys.
Right.
We did Quincy Jones. I mean, that was just beautiful, and a lot of people don't know we did the Detroit State Fair.
Right.
Where they
we opened up for Quincy. And that was the biggest honor I ever had to have him request us from.
I tell you, and Billy Eckstein Jr. was Quincy's music director. Man, that was just phenomenal being around that phenomenal.
The Brothers talent. Johnson.
Right.
Oh man, it was.
Shawn, you're a Central State University graduate.
Absolutely.
You're a Marauder. And
Proud of it.
I spent 23 great years at Central State, so you know we have a connection there. You started out in high school with a group called the Imperials. Talk a little bit about that.
The Imperials was a great high school band to come up with. They were all music majors at Roosevelt High School. I was one of the youngest one in the group. But we put together a band, and the band, we had 13 members in this band. But it was from this band I learned how music should be put together. Everybody had a specific place to play. And don't you play over this in my spot, and make sure you learn your chords and all this. And it was a good learning experience. And we were hard at working, and we played every weekend. I had no high school days. I had to play every weekend, but we had that many gigs to work on. We would play Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, go to school, keep your grades up, and we were making pretty good money for a 13-piece band.
And how old were you then?
15.
And see,
16.
you know, when I used to see you guys perform at Roosevelt, because we knew we had a great choir, we knew we had a great band, because the music director, the person that ran that, was just phenomenal. Junie Morrison came out of there,
Junie,
and
yeah.
it was just phenomenal. So we knew we had that back then. But when I would see you guys perform in Roosevelt's auditorium, I mean, it was just so. It was like seeing a professional band perform, and you guys were just kids.
Right. You know, I sit back and listen to some of the things that was down in Dad's basement that, you know, he would record us.
Right.
And I got all these little 1/4-inch tapes out, and I said, man, that's a little high school group playing.
Yeah, I can imagine.
We sounded pretty good.
You sure did. And that's the band, the Imperials, that your dad helped manage, correct?
Right.
Right. I remember those days. Your dad was a taskmaster. He was a taskmaster. He kept you guys right on point. He made sure that you guys were professional, and you needed that because you were just kids.
Right. He didn't fool around, you know. We didn't have no tomfoolery, no drugs. You came to practice. You had to keep your grades up. And it was great. And it turned out that we were backing, during that time, a lot of Motown acts that were just fresh out.
Right.
And that was some of the greatest times I've had. I remember backing up the Spinners.
Right.
I remember backing up the Marvelettes, the Supremes. The highlight was with the Temptations when they first had My Girl.
Right.
And that was a great feeling, you know.
I'm sure it was, to be on stage with those great musicians, wasn't it?
Yeah.
After the Imperials, what happened? Where did you go? Who'd you end up
Well, this is what happened. After the Imperials, I hooked up with June Schoon, Junie Morrison. And Junie and I came in contact at the Ebony Club, because all the musicians would go down to the Ebony Club, and everybody would have this jam session.
Right.
And Junie said, man, I'm going to leave the Untouchables and start my own group. Don't you want to play it? I said, well, I'm still with the Imperials. He said, well, I said, and plus, I said, we might break up in another 3 months. He said, well, I'll play with you for 3 months. And he did. Played bass for the Imperials.
Right.
And then you go on the road with me. And then that's when everything started to break, you know. Went on tour with Junie down south, got introduced to the Chitlin circuit.
Right. And what was the name of the band then?
Junie and I.
Junie and I, the I Band.
Yeah.
I remember that.
We were smoking.
I bet. Playing the funk.
Playing the funk.
Yes, sir.
You know. And
how long did that band last?
I stayed with Junie, I guess 6 to 8 months.
And one thing that I knew about you guys, and I admired about you guys, because most of you guys played all the instruments.
Right. We didn't have a button to hit like they got nowadays. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And I can't. To me, it's kind of hard for me to get into. But I'm not trying to disrespect the younger folks.
Right.
But it would be nice if they actually learned how to put music together and do it, you know, correctly.
Right.
Just pay your dues.
You've got several albums here. Let's talk about these albums, and let's talk about the first one.
The first one. This is the first album I did.
Live On, Dream On.
Right. This was a group called Sun.
Right.
Out of Dayton, and it was a group that was made up from the Majestics and the Imperials.
Right.
And with various musicians taken at it and added in.
Right.
And we got this deal, and we were opening up for the Commodores.
What about this particular album here?
Now this one is the same copy, it's just different cover and stuff.
Right. So it's on the inside, it's the same music.
Yeah, the same music and stuff.
Right.
And I did 2.5 albums with the group Sun.
If you recall, Shawn, when you were with Sun, many times you guys would call me to come in the studio and listen to the
Right.
music with you, man.
Right.
And I don't know, but I may be on the back of that album as a thank you, that first album. I don't know if it is. And I would look
No,
at that.
you on all mine for the, you know, because I would
That's
always,
right. That's right.
I'd always give you the test patterns that we would
Right,
get back.
right. I knew I was
and
on
I'd have
somebody
y'all
else.
pick out what,
Yeah,
because
exactly.
we would overcut, and then
Right.
I would let y'all pick out the album.
Man, I tell you, it was just such a great time being in the
Right.
studio.
So-
Where did the name Dayton come from? Well, we know where the name Dayton came from, but why did you name your group Dayton? And let's hold this album up.
Okay, why did I name the group Dayton? For one thing, that's the only thing I could get that passed when I went in to claim it
Right.
for the publishing.
Right.
Actually, I wanted to be representing the majority of music that came out of this area.
Excellent.
My band would, I think, had all the aspirations of all the other bands that were through here, since we had, what, 15 bands? You
Right.
know about that, Turk.
Right.
And it was a melting pot then, you know. And
Sure it was.
so I wanted to represent my city, even though my city seems not to like me sometimes, you know, and just expose that for what we were, because we had so many good groups here.
What about this was the Hot Fun in the Summertime? You did a remake of Slide and Found
Oh.
Stone, and there's one of my favorite tunes called Heavenly.
Heavenly.
On this tune.
We had everybody from Bootsy. Oh, the name's Bootsy Barber.
Yeah.
From the Junie Morrison
Right.
to Amir Bayan, which is Cool in the Gang.
Right.
I also had on this album Melba Moore.
I mean, there was a kid that sang on this album that was in your group named Evan.
Oh, Evan Rogers.
Yeah,
Sure.
man. I remember
Oh.
Evan very clearly. And I mean, this young kid, he was from New York?
He was from New York.
Right, I remember. And this kid, I mean, good-looking
Right.
kid, looked like he was maybe Italian.
Yeah, he was.
Right, and boy, when this young man would open his mouth,
Mm-hmm.
man, and the name of the song was Heavenly. He had a heavenly
Right,
voice.
right.
So you had a heck of a group together.
Right. Most of those were East Coast guys that I put together, and they were very great to work with. They brought a whole different sound and style to the Dayton sound that we had going on.
That's right, the
Just
Dayton
added
sound.
to it. And when I started getting comments from Quincy Jones and that they were listening to things that we did, I was very impressed. You know?
And I was impressed just to be a part of that because
Uh-huh.
you impressed me so much with your music talent and the things that you were doing. I mean, we spent a lot of quality, you and I spent a lot of quality
Sure.
time together. And it was always exciting for me to be in your company because I knew there was going to be some music there and it was going
And
to
to
be original.
be some excitement
There'd be some
there.
excitement there. You did a song called you did a remake of The Sound of Music, and man, I'm still playing that on my radio station.
And I did that up to your studio.
Right, you
Up
sure
to
did.
Central State.
That's right.
That's the first thing I did on the 16 track,
That's right.
along with Peanut. He was my aide up there. At that
Right,
time.
right. And man, it was just so much music came from you. Shawn, we are in the process of developing and hopefully in the next several years building a funk museum, Hall of Fame, and exhibition center. And we're sure that we're going to request that some of your music is included in
It's
that.
right here.
Right.
This, you know.
What's your take on that? How important is it for us to do that here in Dayton, Ohio?
I think it's important because people from this area need to identify and know that there were some things that were really happening back through the mid 70s through the 80s that need to be that they need to be proud of.
Sure.
You know, because actually to come from this city here, the audience when I was coming up in high school, they were very demanding.
Sure.
So if you got up and didn't sound right, you'd get booed, throw
Yeah,
stuff
it was
at
like the
them.
Apollo Club in New York.
Right. They
Yeah.
They did not fool around. So I think that's why so many of the 15 groups that had major contracts back in there should be recognized. Because it was hard work. I mean, we didn't copy off each other.
Right. Everybody was different.
Everybody was different.
and had a different sound, but everybody played the funk.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
and that's a major part of it because when I would see you guys on stage in high school, you wouldn't have known that you guys were kids because the steps were tight, the rhythm, the music was tight. You would thought the Temptations was on stage or the Four Tops were on stage or any major group that was popular back in the day to see you guys perform. It was just
I
phenomenal.
would sure like to see us go back to that.
Let's say history repeats itself.
Yeah,
so
well,
maybe,
you know, not that I'm knocking the new, but I'm just not a big blue jean fan that's halfway down your behind.
Right.
I come to see you perform. I don't want to clap my hands or throw my hands in the air.
Right.
I want to see you do something.
I want to see you play music.
Right.
In this funk museum, and Shawn, you're a Central State graduate. You've been in education. You've been a teacher. I remember when you were a teacher.
Woo!
What and how important is the educational piece that we're going to introduce to our kids, music-wise, for this?
It's very important. Turk, I remember when you were on Dale, I remember you making an announcement that you were not going to play X brand music.
Right.
And you stuck to your guns on that.
I'm still like that today.
And you still like that today because these kids need to, if you're going to create something, like the last time I saw Stevie Wonder, he was saying, you got all this stuff, young people, you know.
Right.
Let's create something that's beautiful, about love. Let's talk about all the down stuff that we could talk about. Because if you get a dose of that every day, then you're going to be just as down as the music you listen to.
It's going to affect your mind. And the beautiful thing about all the groups that came out of Dayton, and I can say this publicly, all these albums here, even Junie genius as he was, working with George Clinton and his
And
mind.
the last thing Junie did was the gospel thing with Kirk Franklin.
That's right. None of the music that came from Dayton, Ohio had negative lyrics in it. It was all good music. So I tell people, you know, you don't have to sell sex, drugs, and profanity to get a platinum or gold record. You don't have to do that. And you're a perfect example with these records because all the groups that came out of Dayton had major contracts. All the groups that came out of Dayton sold thousands of records, gold and platinum.
Still selling.
And still selling them today. And not one of the groups had anything negative in any, because I wouldn't have played it. Because I already, regardless of whether.
I mean, but the only thing that came close to that was the one year when the Players dropped that one cover with the girl halfway naked. They said, but it was art. You know,
Reverend Jackson called me about that, you know, from Chicago. And, you know, I told him very clearly, it has nothing to do with the music on the inside. Okay, it was the album cover, and Satch was so creative, and you know,
Satch was a genius.
Satch was a genius, and I
Satch
could not
started
tell,
it all, you know.
Exactly, and I could not tell Satch what to do with his group because that wasn't what I was.
How
there
you going to
for.
tell a man to do what he did?
Right, and it sold a lot of records.
Right.
You know,
and I can understand some of the politics that went on with the Ohio Players. You know, they were a very great group. If it hadn't been for them, I remember when I was first contacted about getting a record deal, Diamond, Sugar, Satch set me down, explained Marshall, and you know, and explain what was going on.
Right.
Didn't ask me for a dime. Didn't want nothing else. You know.
Right.
And those brothers, I mean, you know, the friendship.
So we experienced that
Yeah.
with the album cover, but again, and 35 years later, I still say the same thing. It had nothing to do with the inside of the music. My position was violent music makes violent kids.
Right.
It still is today. And if you're talking about sex, drugs, and profanity and using that in your music, it's going to affect these kids' minds.
Sure.
And none of the music that Roger with More Bounce to the Ounce, Computer Love, Lakeside with All the Way Live, Slave with Slide, and Keith Harrison with Riding High, and all the music, your music with Hot Fun in the Summertime and The Sound of Music and Heavenly, all that was great music. It wasn't good music, it was great music.
Yeah.
And you guys should be honored and should be recognized for your contributions.
And, you know, let it be known that it's only through the Lord that we were, you know, fortunate enough.
Well, you get blessings.
Yeah, you get your blessings. So God is good all the time. I'm a frank believer of that.
What are you doing now, Shawn? I know you've been a little under the weather, and as we're growing older, we both have to share
I've been
that.
hospitalized over the last two years and a half. So.
Right, okay.
And
you look good, though. You know,
I'm
you dropped
80
some
pounds
weight.
lighter, yeah.
Right.
So I feel good about that. But when I came off that operating table, you know, I just said, well, let me get my life straight. Let me give all my praises and stuff and honor to the Lord.
Right.
And He's been just nursing me back, and new doors opening out. I'm in contact now with Capitol, who should, I think, re-release some of my things.
Well, that's great.
Working on with a project with Tony Terry
Okay.
out of New York.
Okay.
And we got a lot of good little few things.
Well,
coming up.
you've been blessed, and you've been blessed, and you've counted your blessings, and we're both still here after almost 40 years now. So that says a lot, man, because like I said, you and I have spent a lot of quality time together with, as excluding the Ohio players and Junie, who I also spent quality time, but you and I spent some very, very quality time. You gave me an opportunity to have some housing, when I fell on hard times, and you looked out for me, and I really appreciate it. Yeah. In closing, Shawn, give me your some closing remarks about the Funk Museum, the educational piece, and where we should go moving forward.
Well, I hope that the citizens of Dayton recognize what you guys are trying to do. Right. It's good to finally see the city taking time out to look at what these older bands have done and what type of music they have brought to the whole music industry. I hope that Dayton Public Schools and the other school systems here can somehow get things put back on track with the music and the art. Because I'm to understand that a lot of the schools don't even have music and art anymore.
That's true.
And I mean, like, what is that about?
Right.
What is that about? You can't create music? Music is an international.
Yeah, music is therapeutic.
Yeah, and it's a good thing. But if you're going to do it right.
Do it right.
Do it right.
Well, see, when you have a young mother that's 28 years old, she's listening to the same music that her 12 or 13-year-old listening to.
Right.
And it might be the wrong type of music. So,
right.
You've got it running into each other now over the last 40 years. Shawn, thank you very much for joining us here on the Funk Chronicles, my brother.
Thank you very much for having me. Love you too, Turk.
And God bless you. Continue to do what you're doing. Continue to do the music. And you'll be hearing from us again very soon.
Good.
Ladies and gentlemen, you have been watching the Funk Chronicles with your host, Dr. Turk Logan from Logan Communication and the Funk Museum Hall of Fame and Exhibition Center. This has been a great show. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.